obviously a lot of the people involved in counterfeiting are involved in criminal activities as well. So the money not just now gets taken away from the rightful hands, but now also ending up in wrongful hands. So now they are going to use this money for trafficking, terrorism, and all of these illegal activities that you can think of.
So, guys, in our last episode, you can check it out right here. We did a deep dive into the counterfeiting space in the seeds supply chain market. Okay, so, what we're going to discuss today is in the same sector, but in a different segment. We're talking about agricultural inputs. Here, I'm referring to fertilizers, pesticides, I'm referring to insecticides, and I'm willing to, based on our research, I'm willing to bet that counterfeiting in this segment is a lot more than the seed supply chain. So Vikas, can you just set up some context for our listeners, brand managers, marketing heads, consumers, as to why it's so dangerous counterfeiting in this space and why it's a lot larger than the seed supply chain?
Yeah. So talk about insecticides, pesticides in particular, right? As compared to seeds, and both contribute towards being agri-inputs, especially for a farmer, right? And these are what basically ends up being used to help him grow the produce, whatever they are trying to produce, right? And then if you look at pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, all of these are, most of these formulas are patented, which means only certain companies which can make them. So obviously when certain, aspects of a products have an IP to it, the probability of it being counterfeited is actually much more, right? So specifically in this case of pesticides, insecticides, we've seen a lot more companies. So a certain company will have a patent around one particular formula versus another company would have a patent around another formula, which will work, differently with different soil conditions, different conditions, right? So we've seen specifically, let's say if a company manufactures a particular insecticide, it's very likely that insecticides works really well in particular region, right? And then hence it tends to get used a lot. So the chances of a counterfeiter capitalizing on that is much more. And that's what we've seen. I mean, as compared to seeds, seeds are also very much counterfeited. But as compared to seeds, pesticides, your insecticides, your herbicides, etc., fertilizers as well, definitely would have a higher percentage points in terms of the counterfeiting that we see.
Okay. So let's start with the first point, which is, we're trying to understand the prevalence of counterfeiting in this agri inputs. So based on what you guys have done and what you've seen in the market, interacted with these brands, how has counterfeiting shown itself? At what level of the supply chain has it shown itself? Typically, how have you seen counterfeiters, try and replicate these products and patents?
Yeah. So, a lot of it happens in the supply chain itself, right? If you start from the manufacturer, it travels through a warehouse, it goes to different distributors, finally ends up in the hands of a retailer, and then eventually in the hand of a farmer. So the product would have already exchanged multiple hands while it gets to a farmer. So the probability of counterfeit being introduced in the supply chain in that case is higher because the number of nodes involved are much higher. And especially in this case, like I already mentioned, right, there is a scope of counterfeiting being much high, given, the IP is very much focused around a few players. The counterfeiter stands to benefit by counterfeiting one or the two other, brands or one of the two formulas as well, right? And also a lot of this manufacturing is also outsourced. So while a brand itself might be doing a part of the manufacturing, certain of the formulas might be outsourced to other players. So which also means that there is a lot of other third parties involved in this case. So given there are so many players involved, given the money involved, given that the counterfeiter stands to make a lot from counterfeiting pesticides, there is going to be a huge amount of counterfeiting that happens in this case.
Now, you mentioned that there's a lot of outsourced manufacturing going on in this space. If it's a farmer, the product is coming from
the brand,
from a brand versus I'm buying a counterfeited product. How is it really affecting my output or my production if it comes from the same factory?
Okay, so while a brand definitely would follow certain guidelines, will follow the regulations in terms of the chemicals. I mean, imagine that each and every label that you make for insecticide has to be verified by the department. So the labels, the content of the label itself is verified. And of course, even the product has to be verified and certified as well, right? So a lot of science goes behind in ensuring that whatever chemical composition is mentioned on the label is actually correctly in the product as well. But a counterfeiter would not care about this, right? I mean, a counterfeiter is mostly worried about making quick buck. That's what he or she is worried about, and which also means they would compromise a lot of these standards or quality parameters which are very much required, ensuring that there is good quality of crop produce, that ensuring that the farm itself is not harmed, ensuring that there is no carcinogenic substances in this which could lead to diseases like cancer, etc. So
Wait. So coming back to this, when you say lead to diseases but like cancer, etc., can you elaborate a bit more?
I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was a case study where certain cotton farmers ended up basically being affected by the pesticides that they were using, which was found to be fake, and which also led to a lot of infertility around in the area. And then almost there was a generation where they couldn't have, the whole generation did not have kids. So you can imagine the consequences that fake pesticides, fake insecticides could lead to. And apart from health concerns, of course, for a farmer, they're using pesticides to ensure that the pests don't grow. If a pesticide is not effective, obviously the pest will grow and affect the produce as well. Or if it's over effective, it'll not only reduce, may reduce your yield, but also, affect your soil as well. So it might kill the healthier, rather important pests or insects which you need for, the plant growth to happen. So some of these aspects are very important. So everybody stands to lose when a counterfeiter counterfeits pesticides and insecticides, because end of the day, you are also eating the produce that is grown from these harmful, chemicals. And when you're consuming
something
them,
unregulated, you're consuming.
Obviously, it's unregulated.
The chemical it'll become a humicide, whatever.
Yeah, so homicide.
Yeah.
So basically, it could end up leading huge issues to your human health as well, right? So that's where things end up.
So even if it's being made by similar factories or same region or whatever it is, counterfeiter probably is doing unregulated stuff, and this is a very regulated market, is what I understand.
Yes, a counterfeiter might just set up a factory where they might start manufacturing fake pesticides, fake chemicals. Need not care about the composition at all. Need not care about the standard quality parameters. Need not worry about the harmful substances that might go into the product itself. And eventually, you can imagine consequences that it will lead to.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about the economic impact for the brand, for the government, for the farmer, when they end up buying something counterfeit. So can you take us through that?
I mean, if you look at the brands stand to lose because instead of your product, now a fake product is being bought.
On your name.
On your name. So one, they lose out on the sale, which has happened. They, of course, lose out on the money that they would have made. More importantly, if the product ends up not meeting the expectation of the farmer, you also tend to lose on that loyalty as well, which you would have built and which you have spent so much on cultivating. Brands losing out on loyalty and, of course, your sales. Now, a consumer who's purchased a fake product obviously stands to lose a lot. Of course, they lost money because they purchased a fake product, assuming it was a genuine product. It's not worth the money you spent. And now you go and use that product. Obviously, the impact of that product is not going to be as much as what the original product would have brought you, right? So in this specific case, pests would not get killed, insects would not get killed, your fungus or whatever it is that you're trying to use these insecticides or pesticides for will not obviously be effective.
Fertilizer will not end up helping it grow.
Absolutely. So it will not help them meet the yield that they are planning to have. And then it could also lead to consequences where even the soil starts getting affected. So it has long-term consequences for a consumer. For the government, is loss of taxes. Obviously, if you are purchasing a genuine product,
it'll be taxed correctly.
It's going to be taxed correctly. The money, there's going to be a right amount of money flow to the government. But counterfeit products are not sold to the right channels. They're obviously sold through cash transactions. A lot of these are undervalued and all of that happens. So government tends to lose on.
They lose out on taxes, of course.
So lose out on taxes. And very importantly, also, let's talk about subsidies, right? Worldwide, $1.8 trillion of subsidies are given out every year on agriculture inputs. So if you look at it that way, a lot of that money, 30% of it, if it's fake, 30% of it is going to the wrong hands.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So, there's loss everywhere. Loss in terms of revenue, money consumers get to lose. And down the chain, you can think about even consumption when you are consuming these products. Sometimes some of these crops are grown for your livestock, right? For animals, right? For feeding the animals like cows, etc. And even they tend to lose, their health gets affected. And now let's say you're drinking their milk. So at the end of the day, humans, animals, everybody's affected.
If there was a personification in the economic space for a parasite, this would literally be it.
Absolutely, right? I mean, a lot of that money ends up in the wrong hands as well. Not just that. It's a parasite. It's a terrorist parasite, if you want to call it that way. Because it's not just eating up on the resources, but it's also using that resources to harm you back.
Can you give me an example?
So, I mean, a lot of that money eventually which is made goes in the wrong hands. I mean, obviously, a lot of the people involved in counterfeiting are involved in criminal activities as well. So the money not just now gets taken away from the rightful hands, but now also ending up in wrongful hands. So now they are going to use this money for trafficking, terrorism, and all of these illegal activities that you can think of.
So guys, this is not just something we're making up. I'll leave links in the description of real articles of studies done by the UN, by various other bodies, stating how counterfeiting actually ends up funding terrorism in a lot of different countries in the world. So we have actually done a video of this in the past as well. I'll see if I can link that also in the description. But yeah, moving on, Vikas. So to conclude, like the economic impact, it's not just limited to economics is what you're trying to say. There's societal impact.
Absolutely. So economical, societal, health, you want to think of it, I mean, counterfeiting has large long-term consequences and large consequences as well. So it is an important topic to discuss, and it's very important that people, not just companies but even consumers, are aware of it, so that there is enough pressure on everybody to ensure that counterfeiting is curbed. I mean, that's also important that your consumers are also educated about the effects of counterfeiting. Sometimes consumers buy products knowingly as well in other sectors, but I'm sure in this case that's not the case, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure.
I don't think a farmer would ever knowingly want to buy counterfeit stuff.
I'm sure if it's a purse or a wallet, I'm sure people would do that. But in this case, it's not, right? I mean, a farmer is not buying something knowingly that that's not effective. It's not going to be effective.
Right.
It's a counterfeited product.
Yeah.
So here it's why it's so much important to ensure that doesn't happen.